Now, there were a number of impressive performances this past weekend, whether it was Accelerate, whether it was Rushing Fall, whether it was any of these, whether it was Eskimo Kisses, whomever. You can make a case that there were a number of impressive performances. Perhaps none more so than this one here in the Del Mar Handicap. Here's the field of 11, and post-time favorite was It's in the Post. 5-2, tepid choice, 5-2, bordering on 3-1. There were questions about whether or not he liked Del Mar, because I believe he was 0 for 10 coming into this spot. There were questions about what kind of form he was in, because he had run so poorly in the Eddie Read. But there were a number of questions for a lot of horses in this spot. There was one that it felt like perhaps there was a scenario, especially if you listen to his trainer, that the Eddie Read, okay, he didn't really pick his feet up that day, but this was the goal all along, to get him stretched out to a longer distance. And boy, did he ever come with an electric performance. Here's the stretch run of this year's Del Mar Handicap.
Side, here comes Flamboyant with a late run as well, and also Multiplier. Homeward bound Fashion Business, well clear. Fashion Business is clear by 7 as they come to the wire. What a smart ride by Flavion Pratt. He took that gamble and it paid off handsomely. Fashion Business romps in. You got to want to finish second.
Fashion Business wins by 1 million. He gets the job done in this year's Del Mar Handicap, followed by You Gotta Wanna and Multiplier, who runs third at odds of 4-1. Having that 45-1 shot run second, though, if you played the exacta for a buck, comes back $233. Not bad for a Phil D'Amato exacta. Let's talk about the winner, Fashion Business. 3 of 12 lifetime, $283,000 in career earnings, owned by Little Red Feather Racing and Marcia Nafee, trained by Phil D'Amato, bred by Andrew Rosen in Great Britain, ridden to victory by Flavion Pratt. Might be the ride of the weekend, possibly. You see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He's by the great Frankel, out of an Empire Maker mare named Icon Project. 104 Buyer speed figure in this just smashing victory from Fashion Business. Won by more than 5 lengths. Came home in 11:77. That point right there, I don't think can be overstated. We're going to rattle off to you the top 7 finishers and their final eighths of a mile. 11:77, 11:42, 12:16, 12:20, 12:18, 12:09, 12:53. The reason to me that's significant and important to note, Fashion Business went for home with a half mile to go because Flavion made that big move, that brush up to the front. So that 11:77, the second fastest come home time of the top 7 horses, but that's also considering he started his run a hell of a lot earlier than the 8th pole. This was a really spectacular performance from this horse, and it always felt like they were trying to figure out what his best game was. Was he better at those sort of middle distances, or was he better going longer? They finally are able to stretch him out. He ran really well in the Manhattan. I liked him coming back in the Eddie Read. He didn't really pick his feet up. There were a lot of horses that didn't run that day. Phil D'Amato said that was a means to an end to get to this spot, and boy, did he deliver with just a giant performance. 104 Buyer speed figure. You Gotta Wanna earns a 96 running second. Multiplier and Colonist both earn 94s. Flamboyant, Ashley Love Sugar, 93s, and It's in the Post in 92. Let's discuss It's in the Post. It sounds like for him, he might be rested. Jeff Mullins, I credit him for coming forward and just saying, we'll let him regroup. He's been a warrior for 2 years. Maybe we sit him out for the next few months. Because you got to wonder. It's so tough, especially with a horse like this, because it felt like at Santa Anita, he wasn't quite as strong as he had been in the months prior. But these 2 races, he's been dreadful. Now you've got to factor in, perhaps he just doesn't like Del Mar. That's entirely possible. Wouldn't be the first time we've seen a horse not like a surface. But he's just, very rarely did you see such poor performances these past 2. So perhaps he's going a little bit off form. And I credit the connections for saying, you know what, we're going to do right by the horse. He's brought us all over the place. If he needs a little bit of a breather, let's give him a little bit of a breather. And hopefully we get him back at Santa Anita at some point. Fashion Business meant to say this. Most logical spot, it sounds like, is the John Henry Turf Championship as the prep for the Breeders' Cup Turf. That prep would be on September the 30th, obviously realizing that the Turf would be on the first weekend in November. I don't know if it's the 2nd or the 3rd, whatever date it is. I thought those horses ran very well, or Fashion Business anyway. You Gotta Wanna is a nice up-and-comer. I don't know that he's necessarily a Breeders' Cup type, but maybe there's some spots for him going forward as he continues to improve. Multiplier, nice to see him get back to a decent enough effort. Colonist, still, I don't know, man. I don't know what his game is at this point. I wonder if he's just a notch or 2 below, whether he goes long on turf, whether he's a middle distance, or whatever else it may be. Ashley Love Sugar, I hate to say it. It is what it is. He's 7 years old. I think he's probably lost a little bit on the fastball. I think he's getting a little bit long in the tooth. Don't think he's quite what he once was. Kenja Storm needs to go shorter. I don't think this distance was going to work for him. Didn't think it was going to, and it didn't work for him. The horse that I want to discuss is Flamboyant. I said it when we did the preview for this race. You can just basically cut the audio from every preview that we've ever done with Flamboyant and just replay it. He is a mile to a mile and a 16th to a mile and an eighth kind of horse. You get him out past that, he still will come with a run, but he'll flatten out. The distance is not his friend. Keep him at between 8 and 9 furlongs. I think he still has a giant race in him, and this race to me is all the evidence that I need to see to think that, because on the far turn, he ran basically when Fashion Business opened up and made his move. This horse came in behind him. Bejarano, I thought, gave him a beautiful ride. Followed that sort of path, and he looped the field. And for a minute, it looked like he was getting ready to actually threaten. And he flattened out down the lane. He has that bang quick burst, and the distance is not his friend. You get him back to a mile, mile and a 16th, mile and an eighth, and I recognize it's easier said than done because not every stakes race is between 8 and 9 furlongs. But my goodness, get this horse back to a middle distance. You saw what happened when you ran him in the middle distance race up Northern California on the turf. Bang, winner at 11-1 or whatever it was. He's run big races at these sort of distances in the past. The longer it goes, the worse it is for this horse. Keep him between a mile and a mile and an eighth. I threw him on my DRF horse watch. I thought he ran really, really well on Saturday. I just think the distance got to him. To me, this is the kind of horse, you get him shorter, he's going to fire. He's going to fire, and he's going to be a big, big price. He was 21-1 here, wherever it ends up being. And I'm trying to think. That's the problem. He's not a grade 1 caliber horse out on the East Coast, so a race at Keeneland probably doesn't work for him. At Santa Anita, I'm trying to think if there's anything in the fall off the top of my head. I can't think of anything. If you want to fire away at me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, or beneath the video player on YouTube. To me, Flamboyant, he's that kind of horse. Mile and an eighth. You got a big chance with him still, and a big, big number. At the end of the day, no one had a chance in this race outside of Fashion Business. Fashion Business with one of the more impressive performances from an older horse on turf this year, and one of the more impressive speed figures as well. 104 buyer for Fashion Business. Sounds like the John Henry Turf Championship is the logical prep leading into the Breeders' Cup Turf.